Akalofalai atu ta lofalava. I'm Louis Bonifacio, and I'm here today with the amazing Reti. Ta lofa Reti.
Ta lofa Louis.
Mai oil nei aso.
Manuia
All right, we're so glad that you're able to come and share your story with us. And do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. Greetings, my name is Reti. Ta lofa lawe topa ima tō mamalu. Greetings to you and to the mana that you hold. I was born in the pristine island nation of Samoa.
Amen.
And actually in the village of Letongo, to my parents, Moa Meali'i AhVoa of Sasatele, Letongo and Safotu, and Leatu Taimi AhVoa of Mota'a, Manua, Alau, Fastouta and Manono. We migrated here to New Zealand when I was 2, and we live in South Auckland and Māngere, and have lived, and that's where I live when I'm living in New Zealand, except for when I lived in Wellington for a season.
Tell us, how did you get into missions, and what's your church background, and was that something that you were keen on, or it just happened, or were you just told to go on missions?
Yeah, sure, thank you. So I was raised in a Roman Catholic background, and in that space I actually had quite a serious understanding of God and his love for me and the way he'd gifted me. When I was 19 at university, I became a believer. I realized that actually there was something more that God required of us, not just a religious expression, but a relationship with him. And as a 19-year-old, I started going along to a youth ministry in South Auckland called Youth for Christ first, and then it became Heartbeat City Ministries. And through them, I was introduced to a mission organisation called Open Doors with Brother Andrews. And that was the first mission organisation I supported. And also, some of the reading I did in the early days of first becoming a believer were books from like Voice of the Martyrs. So early on as a believer, I realised that actually this Christian thing is a very serious thing, and that people had given their lives for this faith and for gospel and for to make Jesus known, and had sacrificed a lot in order to be a Christian. And so there was quite a high standard that's required of us to actually hold this faith. When I was sitting at the back of a Baptist church in 2000, I was in between churches at that time. There was a mission rep that came there from Middle East Christian Outreach, Miko, and he was talking about all the different mission opportunities that were available in the Middle East and this country and that country. And he was saying, there's all these opportunities, but there's so much need and there's not enough people to respond. And so I was sitting at the church, I thought, wow, that's amazing, God. I hope somebody responds, And then I heard this voice just come up, I don't know, behind me, in my heart, in my ears. I'm not sure, but it just said, Reti, why don't you respond? And I'm like, God, was that you? I mean, I've never heard God like that before, so I wasn't sure. And then I thought, I better be a steward of this opportunity in case this is God. And, one of the things I learned is really obedience. That's the key to following Christ, and at those days we were taught, that you really want to live a life that's centered on the will of God. That's the life you really want to get. So I thought, wow, I better just go check. If that was God, then I better do something with this opportunity. So I spoke to the rep and I said to him, hey, look, I'm really interested in short-term missions. What's a short-term mission? And he was like, 1 to 2 years. And I'm like, whoa, 1 to 2 years? He goes, what were you thinking?
That's not short.
And I was thinking like 3 or 4 months. And he was like, okay, 3 or 4 months, let's work with that. And so I think that was like Christmas time, 1999, going into 2000. And then about April, he comes to me and he's put my application through to Cyprus, where that was where our head office was. And they come back and said, yeah, we want to send her. And I was looking at him and I was like, but how do I know that I'm supposed to go to the Middle East? And I said to him, look, I've been a long-term supporter of Open Doors and I'm part Chinese. And so I thought maybe I should, first be going to China. So how do I know that I'm supposed to go to Middle East and not China? And he said, look, I was a missionary in China. I can get you to China tomorrow if you want to go to China. But I've always lived my life in a way that wherever the Lord opens a door, that's the one I walk through. And I thought that was perfect because that's exactly how I'd been praying. I'm often in my life when I come to a crossroads, I pray those texts out of Revelations. God is the God that closes doors that no man can open and opens doors that no man can close. So I'd been praying like that. And so for him to give me that sort of reflection back back to me was like, yeah, that speaks right into the way that I'm praying. So I knew, okay, I need to go to the Middle East for this term for 4 months. And then while I was out, before I went out, I would be just saying to everybody, I was telling about my short-term mission in places that I could speak about it. I said, look, I really feel like God's opening up this new chapter in my life, and in 4 more months' time, I'm going to know, in 4 more months' time, I'm going to know, in 4 more months' time, I'm going to know, what it is, this new chapter. At that time, I was a corporate, I was in management, and I just felt like, what's God calling me to? I always thought in my 20s he would eventually call me to full-time ministry. Anyway, so I went out as a short-term missionary to, first we were in Egypt, so we were based in Cairo. And while we were in Cairo, we visited places like Alexandria and also the Sinai Peninsula. So very biblical places, where Moses and the exiled Jews were, as they tried to cross over into the Promised Land. And we served there, doing work amongst the school for the deaf and blind students, and some practical things like painting, and then amongst them ministering in churches. So that was really amazing. And then after that short term, I was with a team there, and then my leader and I, we went off to Cyprus for 2 more months. And in the middle of my time in Cyprus, I had an opportunity to go to Syria. So I went to Damascus, and I was just like a block away from that street called Straight. So now, look, I could be reading Acts, because now I'm really in that place, And I was just diligently going through my quiet time. And then I was now in John 4, Jesus talking to the woman. It's the Samaritan woman by the well. And then the disciples coming to get to see him. And there, Jesus turning to them and saying, say ye not 4 more months, and then the harvest. Wow. For you see, look up, the field is already white unto harvest. So, Louis, that number 4 doesn't happen often in the Bible. So I really thought, wow, God's really speaking to me about this 4. And it was really, he was saying, look, not 4 more months and then you'll know. Right now you can see I'm talking to you about your life now. I mean, I had a great life in New Zealand already, a very good life. And he said, but there's this other life that's sitting here for you as well. And this is also a good life. I said, but one of these is better. And of course, my discernment of that was that he was saying this is actually the life that would be better for you. And that's how I ended up preparing to go.
Of a missionary?
Yes, the life of missionary. So it took me 5 years to prepare after I got back to New Zealand. I had to do some management trainings because I had been in management but hadn't completed my training. Then I had to do some theological training, so I went and did some theological training. And then I went out and first to Jordan to learn cultural immersion and language, and then 5 years in Cyprus.
Coming back to the preparation, because I think that's that's key to long-term missions. Apart from your theological training, and language, what were some of the other preparation that you had to go through?
So some of the other preparation is meeting other people who've been on the field.
Right.
So learning from their experiences. Also talking with other believers to just confirm your call. The blessing from my parents, really, really super important, that they needed to be blessing my life and saying, hey, we're with you. If you think this is good, we're with you. So that was super important. So that was part of the preparation. So it's my own spiritual life. So you can't fake a spiritual life. You either have one or you don't have one. And when you're going to be isolated like that, you need to invest in your own spiritual life. So some of that was about retreating and, investing in my own spiritual life. And then my church also needed to support me. That was also the other aspect of that.
Reti, when you were in overseas in the countries that you were in, was it like being a Pacific person in a totally foreign country? Culture, food, all of that.
Yeah. Hey, look, I remember sitting with a Muslim family, an Arab family in Jordan. They were Syrian people, and I was just sitting with them in their home. And this was a family I used to visit a lot. And I just thought, where are the Pacificans at? This is something we can do. We can hold a humble space and we can journey in life. And I just thought, this is all I'm doing with this family. I'm journeying with them and being present to them and holding a humble space. And I think that as Pacifican people, we're really good at that. And then also, you know, the fact of our color, you know, actually this makes us a bit chameleon. So we can actually fit in a lot of missional spaces, and we're not, you know, we're not threatening to many of the cultures that we would enter into. So I really feel like as Pacificans, we have this superpower. And it's a superpower, you know, the superpower is both being a chameleon, but actually sitting in a humble space and journeying.
True.
And this is why actually, although short-term missions are really good, long-term missions are better. Like this Syrian family that I was with, you know, we journeyed together for 9 months. And after 9 months, they were ready to make a decision for Christ. You know, and even when I was running short-term teams, I ran short-term teams out of the same church, my church in Jordan, and over 10 years. So I watched young children grow up from being 5-year-olds, being brand new into our program, to now I'm watching them getting engaged, finish university, getting married, having children. And so actually journeying in life with people, this is what the long-term missionary offers. And so it's far more well, I want to say that short-term missions is effective, but long-term missions is far more effective. And actually the long-term missionary is actually looking out for all people, both what they're doing in their ministry, but actually what all the other Christians are doing in their ministry alongside them, so that they can all do well in the gospel and not negatively impact one another in what they're doing on the ground there. So both, you know, Pacificans, we have a superpower.
Yeah.
And short-term missions are great, but long-term missions is much better.
What would you say to Pacifica young people who are thinking about life ahead? And I'm talking about those who are in their early 20s, between 20 and 30, who are probably thinking, shall I become a lawyer or, you know, play for the All Blacks? Is there something else that they should be considering, if they're, especially those who have a faith in the Lord and willing to be used by God?
Yeah. I think, you know, our people, we're so talented, you know, and we're very capable, and there'll be lots of fields that are open for us. But really, as believers, our real question is, what are we called to? What are we called to? And so I think sometimes, because some of us may have grown up with very little, we pursue a career. I mean, I have to say that I have had a career, you know, and sometimes we think that that's actually what's paramount. But actually what's paramount is that we live a life of call, because then we're actually in the center of God's will, and God will bless that.
God's purpose.
And actually there's nothing more energizing than actually getting up in the morning and knowing what you're doing today is actually what God wants you to be doing in your life. I mean, you can do that as a lawyer, you can do that as an All Black, you can do that as a teacher, you can do that as an engineer. But really our key question as a believer is, what are we called to? You know, and also what are we giving our energy and life to? You know, so you can actually be a corporate on the field. You know, you can be teaching rugby on the field. You know, so all the skills that we have in our talents, they can be used in the field. There's practically no form of employment that can't be used on the field.
Part of your training was to learn the language, because creating a relationship with a family like that for 9 months requires an understanding.
Yes.
And language is key.
Yes. Yeah,
how long did you have to learn Arabic?
Okay. I had a very short window to actually learn Arabic, because I was eventually going to be located in Cyprus, which is a Greek-speaking country. But I spent a year actually learning Arabic. And with that 1 year, I can still go back into that country, communicate, take a team through, move fluidly in some spaces, you know, in the Arab world. So investing in the language is important. But we see this already in Acts 5, don't we? When the Pentecost falls, he speaks in the language, the heart languages of the people. So this is why learning those languages is important.
On that note, do you want to say something in Arabic to finish up the challenge, our people?
Nashi.
Or a prayer.
Or a prayer.
It's up to you.
Yeah. نطلب منكم أو أرجوك منكم لازم أنتوا تفكر شو إرادة الرب. إرادة الرب أكيد متأكد لحياتكم. شوف ثقة بقلوبكم. شو إرادة الرب لحياتكم. هاي أهم شيء. The most important thing is to discern what God's will is for your life.
Woo!